Hey guys, this is Colin from Blackjack Apprenticeship, and it's good to be back here recording a podcast for you guys. I know it's been a little while and hasn't been super consistent, but that's all right. I'm doing what I can. Part of it is that we've been working on a lot of other stuff. I thought I'd quickly fill you in on some updates and then, get into the things I had to mention. One of the things we've been working on is we just released a positive shoe bias in our, it's called the training suite, our really set of training drills within the membership. And so what the positive shoe bias is that you can click this little button and it's going to basically guarantee that you're going to get positive true counts. And the reason for that is that's really what you need 90% of your training to be. I mean, if you can play basic strategy and you can keep the running count, then, you can play through negative shoes, but it's in those positive shoes that you're making your betting decisions, your deviation decisions primarily. So we added that, and it's been, we've gotten really positive feedback, but we've been working on that. Also, I think we put out something like 20 new members-only videos this year. So these are not the videos that are on YouTube. These are ones that are just for, members of the site. And so that's been a process. Filmed those earlier in the year, and then we've been editing them and getting them released. Also, we've been working on our pro betting software. We're working on some new rules, and we're working on just some features to make it better. And that's just always a process, software development. And we are just, I think this week, releasing an Android app. We've had an iOS app for, I want to say 12 years now. And people have been asking for probably a decade when we'd come out with an Android app. And about a year ago, finally decided let's do it, even though there are some challenges to creating an Android app because there's like a million Android phones. But we are just about ready to release our Android app this week, so that's been a process too. Anyway, that's what I've been up to other than the monthly BJA YouTube videos and putting out podcasts when I can. And, being at home with a wife and 6 kids and, normal life stuff. But what I want to talk about today is I guess I'll call it a mailbag. It's not really a mailbag. If you have mailbag questions, feel free to email them to me, Colin, Colin, at Blackjack Apprenticeship. I'm not going to spell that out for you, but you can, use your spelling, your dictionary or whatever to figure that out. Colin at blackjackapprenticeship.com, Colin with 1 L. But these are, I wouldn't say mailbag, but just kind of some things that I've taken note of over the last few weeks that I thought I would get into. And then I wanted to talk about some takeaways, some notes I took down from the last Blackjack Ball. And you're probably thinking, wasn't the Blackjack Ball like 6 months ago? And I think it was actually closer to 8 months ago. But here we are. And I wrote these notes down the weekend of the Blackjack Ball, and I've been meaning to talk about these things. I actually was trying to lure my wife or one of my BJA friends that was at the ball with me into recording this with me, and no one wanted to do it because I don't know. They're all just a bunch of losers. No, I don't know why they don't want to, but here I am, and I'm going to just talk about it myself. So let's get into some of these questions. Not questions, but things I want to talk about. The first one has to do with timing your sessions around busy hours. So there can be this kind of debate of, do I play when the casino is empty so that, tables are less crowded, more rounds per hour, stuff like that, but then there's more attention on me from, the pit boss and all that stuff? Or do I play, when the casino is busy and the pit bosses are more busy, but then the tables are more crowded? Well, I think it really comes down to what you care more about, EV per hour or cover. And then I'll get into kind of a creative, the way that I've always liked to do it. But the problem, if you're playing when it's empty, is you're getting extra heat. And, if you want to try to last longer, if you're the only person in a casino that's throwing out, black action, throwing out $100 bets or purple action, $500 bets or whatever, that's going to stand out much more than when the casino's busy and the pit boss is running all over the place. So you're going to get extra scrutiny. But if you're playing a table heads up as opposed to a full table, you're going to be playing, even in COVID times where a full table is 3 people, you're still going to be playing twice as many rounds per hour. So, you can generate twice as much per hour. So you have to kind of say, well, is the heat worth it? getting twice as much attention, is that going to be, worth it to make twice as much money per hour? But the problem with crowded conditions, I mean, it can be right now, it can be hard to find a table during COVID because it's 3 people to a table. I don't know why casinos aren't just opening more tables, because I would think they would want to make more money, and they just have to cover the cost of, the dealer, really, possibly an extra pit boss. But I would imagine one player is going to generate that much negative EV to cover that expenses. But whatever, casinos are going to do what they're going to do, and it can be difficult to find a table right now when it's crowded. So if you want that, if you want to try to blend in more, go for it. But you just got to account for, you might be making half as much money per hour, or maybe even less. So what I really settled on when I was playing full time was to try to play those like pre-peak hours or post-peak hours. So my favorite days of the week were Thursday and Sunday. Thursday, casinos seem to be kind of opening up more tables, preparing for the weekend, because, Thursday is the new Friday or whatever. Like, they have more tables open on Thursday than they do Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, especially Thursday evening. But it's not yet as crowded as it's going to be Friday night, Saturday, and Sunday during the day. And the time I like to show up was around 9 p.m. because most people still have work on Friday. By 9, the people, it's starting to thin out, but they still seem to have enough tables open. And if you're on that table, they tend to keep it open. If you're betting enough money, they're going to keep it open until you leave the table. So Thursday night was one of my favorite times. And then Sunday night. And Sunday night, it's kind of the flip side, which is they've had all these tables open all weekend, and they're going to start closing down tables by Sunday night. But if you show up at the right time, again, maybe 8, 9 p.m., people are going to start heading home because they got work on Monday, but there's more tables open than there would be, during the day on a Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. So those were my favorite times to play. But the whole point is try to find those optimal times where, it's ideal playing situations. There's enough tables to play. It's not super crowded, but it's not empty. If you've got more tables at your disposal, then you can generate more rounds per hour than if you've just got, one table that you're waiting for a seat at. So I know everything's weird during COVID times, but just think through it. Really, the goal, and I've said this before, I say this at every boot camp, the goal isn't to play blackjack. The goal is to generate positive rounds per hour, to generate positive rounds of blackjack. And the more you generate per hour, the more money you make. So think of it that way. And it is a balancing act of heat versus, just rounds per hour, but you can make that decision. I generally go for rounds per hour and not worry about heat as much, which brings me to the second thing I want to bring up, which is playing through heat. And what brought this to my attention was listening to a recent Gambling with an Edge Mailbag podcast. And if you don't listen to Gambling with an Edge, I recommend it. Bob Dancer, Richard Munchkin, these guys are experts in their fields. They're experts in professional gambling. They, are friends with the most brilliant and successful professional gamblers out there. And then they're sharing this information, for free. So I would definitely listen to that. But they were talking about, someone had asked them a question about, I think they even said that I teach just playing through heat and don't worry about it at all. And that's not far from what I would say. In my book, I talk about, when do you want to shear the sheep? Like, you can shear a sheep many times. And when do you want to just skin the sheep? So if it's your local casino, you might decide, I don't want to just burn this place down. I want to be able to, take money from it over a long period of time because it's convenient, it's close, maybe you're enjoying some comps there. And so you might not want to be as aggressive with your bet spread there. And if you're getting any sort of heat, you might want to just head home, give it a week or two, play on a different shift or whatever. But if you're on a blackjack trip, this is the thing that I learned the hard way, and that, even Josh Axelrad talks about in Repeat Until Rich, is you don't want to back yourself off. And so what that means is, if you're on a blackjack trip and you're getting heat, you have to ask yourself, am I going to be back here anytime soon? And the odds are you're not going to be back there soon enough that it's worth, leaving and trying to save it for another trip. If you're halfway across the country, just keep playing through the heat. Maybe they don't back you off and you get more EV in, or if they do back you off, at least okay, I won't come back here, rather than leaving, flying back, a month later and getting backed off from your previous trip, getting backed off in like half an hour. But there's kind of a bigger question that you need to ask yourself, which is really, what are your goals? If your goals are to maximize EV, then everything I just said probably makes the most sense. If your goals are to play as much blackjack as possible or to enjoy the comps as much as possible, then you might not want to play through heat, you know? If you enjoy beating the game more than you care about the money, then, you know, don't play through heat. If you want money more than you care about being in casinos playing blackjack, then my advice is to really say, what is your time worth? So, you know, what is your time worth of leaving the casino, coming back another time versus just continuing to play and seeing what happens? So, you know, I don't want to say there's a right and wrong answer, but I do want to share from my experience of backing myself off. And when I was doing this professionally, you know, it was so dumb that I'm like, great, am I really going to drive 6 hours back to this casino that was giving us heat just to hope that I last, you know, again? All right, the final thing I want to talk about, this was a private message I received from BJA member Equa Gringo. And what he asks essentially is, when we get those running high counts early in the shoe, let's say you've got a running 20 with 4 decks left, so we have a true 5. Should we be more cautious there than we would if we had, let's say, a running 5 with 1 deck left, and it's the same true 5? Basically, we know deck penetration is important, but is a true 5 as valuable at the beginning of the shoe as the end? You know, this is a question I've been asked plenty of times before, and something that I didn't know when I started out. And basically, what I wanted to share with him, and I'll share with you guys, is that, yeah, a true 5 is slightly more valuable at the end of the shoe than at the beginning, but not as much as you might think. And Don Schlesinger talks about this in Blackjack Attack. It's called The Floating Edge. And he cautions people, don't take it as a bigger issue than it really is. There is a slight increase, but really what a true count does is it normalizes a true count is a count per deck. And so yeah, a true 5 right at the end of the shoe, you know, is a little bit better, but not enough that you're going to be, you know, changing your bet spread much because of it. If anything, what I would say is, if you barely have a true 1 or, you know, barely a true 2 at the very beginning of the shoe, then you're going to be a little more cautious, especially if the rules are poor. If it's poor rules, then you might not raise your bet at a true 1. I just shared a video with our members about how to use our pro betting software to figure out if you even have the edge at a true 1, to make sure you're not raising your bet when the casino still has an advantage. But it might be that you don't have the advantage at a true 1 at the very beginning of a shoe, but you do at the end of a shoe. But that doesn't mean you're going from like no advantage to a massive advantage. It means you're going from a slight disadvantage at true 1 at the beginning of the shoe to a very slight advantage at the end of the shoe. But the value of deck penetration, I mean, it's a huge deal. And I'm sure you've heard me or Richard Munchkin or, you know, any other blackjack expert talk about it. Deck penetration is really important, but the reason why is because it's a few things. One, we're actually likely to get the high cards we're counting on, like literally counting on, you know. I'm sure you've had it where you're playing through this positive shoe and you've got this really high rank count, and all of a sudden, boom, the cut card comes out and you're like, no, I had a running, 10, and now the cut card came off. Well, if the deck penetration would have been deeper into the shoe, you are more likely to have actually gotten those 10s and aces that you were counting on, those 10s that are going to make a dealer bust more often on a 15 or 16, those aces that are more likely to give you a blackjack that gives you a huge advantage. So, deck penetration is valuable because you're more likely to actually get the cards we're counting on, but also the deeper the deck penetration, the more positive true counts we're going to get. So think of it as if you have, let's say, a running 10 with 5 decks left. That gives you a true 2. Well, to get a true 2 with 1 deck left, you only need a running 2. And it's a lot easier to get a running 2 than it is to get a running 10. So with deeper deck penetration, you're going to get more positive true counts in a shoe, because the deeper you get in, you don't need as big of a swing in the rank count to get a positive situation. Well, if on top of that, those true counts are going to last longer with with better deck penetration. Let's say you have a running 10. Well, the deeper you get into the shoe, like that example of the cut card coming out, if you could have continued to bet when you have those positive counts, it's just more positive bets per hour. So my point is, deck penetration is really important, but don't just say, oh, a true 5 at the beginning of the shoe isn't very valuable. A true 5 at the end of the shoe is valuable. No, they're both valuable. Follow the betting software and trust the math, and it will all work out. Okay, hopefully that makes sense to you guys. I wanted to now transition into talking about a few takeaways from the Blackjack Ball. So for those who don't know, the Blackjack Ball is an annual event. It's been going on for 23 years. It was started by Max Rubin, and he hosts it. And it's a group of, 100, 150 people that I think it's called like the greatest blackjack players in the world. And Ben and I got invited while we were running the church team. I want to say like 2009, 2010, and it was just such a trip to be there and to meet kind of these heroes of ours from when we got into card carrying, and people I would still consider heroes. But I've been going most years since then, and continue to go. Bring my wife, and always enjoy it. It's really a unique opportunity, but I want to share just a few takeaways from it. The first one is that we tend to gravitate to the people we most identify with. So when I was there this last time, this was the second or third year in a row where my group, it was 5 BJA people. So myself, my wife, and 3 other BJA people. And we shared a table for the second or third year in a row with a group of people from what I think is called the big team. I don't want to say the real name of their blackjack team, but this Blackjack Ball is over 100 people, and we just seem to gravitate to the ones that we have things in common with. And I wouldn't say it's exactly like high school cliques, but it's not entirely unlike that. And so the big team, they were card counters, just like us, where there's this group of people that some of them were card counters, and I'll get into it a little later, but people that did and are doing all sorts of things. But also the big team, they were incredibly aggressive and fearless. And actually a lot of the church team was influenced by or modeled after this blackjack team, the big team. And as a result, a lot of even the BJA philosophy is modeled after them. This is people that said, hey, we're here to beat casinos with card counting for as much money as possible. And they did. They beat casinos for millions and millions of dollars, as did the church team. And now, collectively, members at BJA have beaten casinos for many millions of dollars. Casinos, if you're listening, forget that I just said that. So the fun thing was we actually didn't spend all this time talking about blackjack or back-offs or anything like that. But we're discussing family and hobbies and this big get together that we did that they were at the year before, 6 months before. But there's something about when you have a common affinity, those are the people you seem to gravitate towards. And the connection seemed to have been made over the years because we just kind of seem to be cut from the same AP cloth. I don't really know. There isn't like some huge life lesson there. It was just an observation, is that, oh wow, we sit with the people that beat the game the way we beat it with a similar ethos, and maybe it's a good reminder to talk to people at the Blackjack Ball that have beaten different games and in different ways. Which brings me to my second point, is that there are so many ways to beat a casino. And I think it's kind of funny at this point. I mean, it's not funny, but there's some irony. It's called the Blackjack Ball. And I think it's because most people got into professional gambling through blackjack and card carrying, but there are not a ton of people in the room, because I try to talk to as many people as possible, not a ton of people in the room that play blackjack anymore. But there are people that are like Tommy Highland. They're still exclusively counting cards for a living. There are people that ran major blackjack teams. There are people that hole card professionally, people beating comps for a living. There are a few people there that have beaten horse races for billions of dollars. And maybe they started out as a card counter, but transitioned into horse race handicapping. There are people there that have beaten card craps and video poker. I'm thinking of you, Bob Dancer. There are poker pros in the room, and people who use shoe computers when they were legal, people that have written more about blackjack than have ever played it. and people that quickly transitioned from beating blackjack to beating the markets. So it's just a really diverse group, which can make discussions really fun, or it can make discussions a dead-end street really quickly. I don't know how many times I've tried to start a conversation with someone and say, oh, what do you do? And they're like, oh, I don't talk about it. Okay, well, do you play blackjack? Not really. Okay. And, it's like the conversation's over because they don't want to give away their secret game, which I'm not asking for. But, it can be fun and really interesting. I've had great conversations with people that have beaten, like I said, markets and horses and all sorts of stuff. Or it can be people that's hard to like find that common ground. But regardless, whatever, it's a unique, diverse group. And hopefully, if you get further into your advantage play career, it might be that you completely stick with card counting like I have done. But it doesn't hurt to meet people that think differently and do different things because, even if you don't play the games they do or the way they do, you can still learn from them and vice versa. And having an open mind and thinking critically is absolutely going to, give you a greater chance of success over your career. So the third takeaway, I don't know if I call it, I guess the takeaway is that my Tommy Highland nightmare was only a dream. So what that means is, I think it was, 2 or 3 nights before the Blackjack Ball, I had this dream that I was talking with Tommy Highland at the ball and saying, how's blackjack going? And he says, oh, yeah, Colin, it's been really rough. I can't play at all anymore. I can't find games worth playing, and they're not letting me play at all. And I feel like I'm basically done. And it was like, I wake up from this dream. I was like, oh no, like that's awful. I hope it's not a premonition or whatever. Well, fast forward to the night of the Blackjack Ball, and I asked Tommy how it's going, and he's like, yeah, it's going great. He's playing plenty of blackjack, and my dream was only a nightmare, and it's I guess at this point it shouldn't surprise me that he's continuing to have as much success as he's had for decades, but there can always be that nagging fear of this thing's going away. It's just a matter of time before it goes away. And there could be a day at which card counting doesn't exist, but it's definitely not 2020. The only thing that's made card counting going away was literally all casinos shutting down for months. But, aside from that, it's not going anywhere. It was just kind of a funny anecdote I thought I'd share, and hopefully I don't have any more Tommy Highland nightmares. Speaking of Tommy, he's the nicest guy. He's come to I don't know how many blackjack boot camps and just shared his wisdom and his story. I doubt he's listening to this, but if you are, Tommy, we're incredibly thankful and grateful for you and hope that you're doing really well. All right, number 4. I just thought I'd share a few of my most memorable conversations. Like I said, it's a unique group of people, and I try to have good conversations with people and learn from them or just hear what they're up to. And it's a large gathering of outside-the-box thinkers. So I thought I'd share a few of those. The first one was Hollywood Dave. So Hollywood Dave, he wrote Hollywood Blackjack. He played on a large blackjack team, and he told me that he's currently, I think he's invested in and perhaps an advisor for a startup that is trying to be kind of like a Yelp for news media. So, or maybe more like a Rotten Tomatoes. So we all know that there's all sorts of media that is on this broad spectrum from accurate reporting to fake news and, not on one side of the aisle, but on both, or all sorts of agendas. And I thought this was really interesting. What they're trying to do is people can, rate and review both news sources based on the accuracy, the credibility of their articles, as well as the individual journalists. And, obviously things like that can be gamed. I know people have said Rotten Tomatoes, people will get thousands of people to write bad reviews or to write good reviews to prop up a movie. But the idea is if people are really rating and reviewing media sources, I'm not sure what their algorithm looks like, but Yelp has done a pretty good job of this. They know when someone's trying to fake it, and you're going to get totally penalized or all your good reviews removed if you're trying to game the system, because their unique value proposition is accurate reviews of businesses. Well, to try to create that for journalism, I think that's a really creative idea. I don't know if they'll have success with it or not, but it was interesting, and definitely a memorable conversation. I remember speaking with Bill Benter. For those who don't know who he is one of these people that he started out playing on a blackjack team. I believe he's played with Richard Munchkin over the years, played with Tommy Highland. He was one of the very early people to create the shoe computers when those were legal. But he went on to handicap horse racing. He's been incredibly successful for it. And he's just a kind, humble horse race handicapping billionaire that occasionally drives for Uber just for fun. And I don't remember exactly what I was talking to him about this time, but the thing that stood out to me is I'm sitting there and I'm trying to ask him, learn how he thinks or what he's been up to or whatever. And I see that he keeps kind of peeking over at the blackjack table where there's this tournament, and it's this 21 question quiz that is incredibly difficult, and very little of it has to do with blackjack at this point. But regardless, it's this really difficult quiz, and the top 5 people go to this final table. He keeps peeking over at this final table, and then he interrupts me and says, "Yeah, I gotta go. I gotta watch the final table." And I thought that was funny because it just shows that we're all just a bunch of normal people. He's a guy that, sure, he's made all this money through horse racing, but he's a guy that is enjoying hanging out with his friends, enjoying camaraderie, enjoying this thing that Max Rubin's created, and this competition that, in one sense, like, really the only thing about it is bragging rights. But people care. People want to see who wins it. Sometimes you win it by arm wrestling or Wii boxing. I know it has happened over the years. Really ridiculous things, but whatever. People are there every year for this event. I don't know if the ball is going to happen this coming year because of COVID. If not, I'll be looking forward to 2022. But it's just fun to see these unique people, but at the end of the day, just normal people enjoying a good time. The next conversation was with Dr. Ed Thorpe. Ed Thorpe wrote Beat the Dealer, which really started card counting. And, I've spoken with him, I don't know, a half dozen times over the years. I always enjoy it. And he's a critical thinker. I've enjoyed listening to him on podcasts and his books and stuff like that. But he wrote a little blurb for my book that came out last year. And it's on the cover of the paperback version. And so I thanked him in person for writing that blurb for my book, which I didn't even know if it was something like he remembered or if it was just, Anthony Curtis said, "Hey, will you do this?" And so he said, "Okay, sure, write something for me," or whatever. But he said he read my book and enjoyed it, which was really cool to hear. But before long, it's my wife and I, Dr. Thorpe, and his wife, and Joe748, and we're standing around talking, and the conversation turns from, talking about blackjack or whatever we've been up to the last year, and then it turns into talking about scuba diving, which Joe748 has done a whole bunch of over the years. And I guess, Dr. Thorpe's wife is a scuba dive instructor, and he likes to scuba dive, and I'm standing here and I'm thinking, how did I go from waiting tables at, a burger place to substitute teaching to listening to a billionaire and his wife talk to a former blackjack student turned friend of mine about scuba diving and swimming with sharks? It was just one of those like surreal moments. And I'll have to catch up with him next year and see if he's done any more scuba diving and swimming with sharks. But whatever, a memorable moment. And the last conversation was talking, this was actually the next day, talking with Max Rubin about what they are doing through the Blackjack Ball. They've created a nonprofit, and they have a Hall of Fame committee that is putting effort and money into helping people with gambling addiction and addiction recovery. And I just thought that was really cool that there's a purpose. There's, I think I mentioned this on another podcast, but my favorite author says, you really, to have success with something, you need multiple bottom lines. It can't just be about money. Well, the Blackjack Ball isn't just about this event and having fun and a silly competition, but they've made it about giving back and about, helping people that really do need help. So I thought that was really awesome. I told him, let me know how I or the BJA community can help be involved with that. And I'm looking forward to hearing more about it, hopefully next year. So another kind of takeaway from the ball was this after party, which is what I spoke to Max Rubin at. And the after party is the next day, the day after the event. And the Blackjack Ball is kind of this black tie event. There's always going to be someone there that's in jeans and a t-shirt, but most people are dressed up, and the idea is to have it feel more formal. Well, the after party the next day is very casual. And it's really where people kind of, let their hair down more than the first night where there's all these things going on in this big event. It's normally the after party is at, well, no, I'm not going to say that. But this time it was 50 or so people crammed into Huntington Press, which is the publisher, Anthony Curtis, his publishing company that put out my book and countless professional gambling books. And this was probably the last large hangout I did before everything shut down with COVID. COVID wasn't a thing as far as anybody knew in February when the ball happened. And so it really stands out because I haven't been a part of an indoor hangout with, 50 people all crammed together. But it was a really fun thing. Anthony Curtis opened this giant bottle of champagne that he'd gotten as a prize from winning the skills competition at the Blackjack Ball a previous year. And there was catered food and, just blackjack experts and family and friends that are serving up catered food and, a ton more conversations. And I'd say much more than the first night, it's this after party that the real maybe networking and idea sharing happens. It's not that the event is just about networking, but it's where you can kind of have more in-depth conversations. Maybe everybody's a little bit more closed off and guarded or uptight or, trying to see who they can catch up with from previous years. The first night, by the second day, it seems like you can have more in-depth conversations, which brings me really to the last takeaway, which is at the end of the day, it's really just about community. This event has been going on for 23 years. It's fun for me. I've been a part of it for maybe 10 years, so not even half of, as long as it's been going on. And even though it's been going on for 23 years, a lot of these people, they've been kind of teammates or, professionally gambling. They've been networked with each other for many more decades than that. Some of the people over 50 years. And so it's really fun to see this group of people that have been meeting for this event for 23 years, and many of them have known each other for, longer than I've been alive. And they're enjoying each other, enjoying being a part of this game of blackjack and the pursuit of beating casinos that they have in common, even if they haven't played the game in decades. There's people there that they played in the 60s or 70s, haven't played since, but there's still this common bond. There's this camaraderie. There's this thing that nobody else in your life really understands, but the people in this room understand it. And so I don't know, I was just kind of like thinking about that. And I think that that's something that we've been able to experience at our boot camps, which, I'm not doing anymore in 2020, but I look forward to being able to do another boot camp, especially a post-COVID boot camp where, it's not masks and all that stuff, but this opportunity to just hang out, get to know people that understand you, network with people that have a similar pursuit of making money at this game, beating the casinos, and enjoying that camaraderie and that common bond. I know that there was a Midwest meetup of BJA members a while back, and I thought that was just really cool. This wasn't something I put together. I was told it was going to happen, and then I read about it. It sounded like it went really well. Obviously, be careful if you network. You don't want to network with someone that might have ulterior motives. But it sounds like people were careful, and it was a really cool event. And a lot of the feedback was it was so great to be around a group of people that think the same way or understand this thing or care about their skills at this game. I don't know, watching at the Blackjack Ball just had me thinking about how valuable community is. And I don't recommend anyone try to beat this game without a strong support system or being a part of a community. So that's it. I don't have anything else for you guys. I think we have a brand new video that should be out now on YouTube about 6 to 5 blackjack. And I actually have some more podcasts that I'm lining up that are more interviews with people that are out there beating the game professionally right now. I'm excited to do those interviews and get those out to you guys. But if you want to find out more, you can check out blackjackapprenticeship.com. You know, we have quite a bit of free stuff, but the special sauce is all behind the membership area. And I hope you guys have a great week, and I will catch you guys later.